You know that frazzled feeling when you wake up and your day already feels out of control? We all do. It's as if life is just happening to us. Work emails pinging, chores piling up, relationships that need attention, and we scramble to keep up. But here is a thought. What if that sense of chaos isn't at random at all, but the product of invisible gears turning beneath the surface? In fact, experts argue that your entire life is a system of systems. Every habit, every routine, every choice you make is like a cog in a vast machine, interlocking parts that create the output you experience each day. Think of a system not as some dry engineering concept, but simply a network of tiny actions working together. As one writer puts it, a system is a set of habits or tiny actions that work together to simplify your life or help you get real work done. In other words, those small decisions, making your bed, brewing coffee, checking a to-do list, aren't trivial. They're the building blocks of how your life flows. And because life is a system, it can be broken down, analyzed, and improved upon. I remember the morning I first saw this clearly. Coffee in hand, pacing to work, feeling like a hamster in a wheel. I was constantly distracted by tasks popping into my head. It hit me then that this frenzy was not fate, but function. Each ping of the phone or thought of a forgotten task was feeding into my personal system. Realizing this was strangely calming. Instead of thinking, I'm overwhelmed, I asked, what gears are turning here, and how can I tweak them? Let's unpack the paradox. We live in an age of hacks and quick fixes, but systems thinking tells us those often fail. There is even a saying from systems theory. Quick fixes typically send you right back to the same problems. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a machine without fixing the broken cog. The same pain will return. On one hand, we crave spontaneity and motivation, waiting for that spark to tackle our goals. But psychology and productivity experts warn that motivation is fleeting, like a flame flickering in the wind. One guide writes that motivation comes and goes like the weather. And waiting for it is like waiting for a bus that never arrives on schedule. Instead, the real secret is building systems that work regardless of mood. Here's the counterintuitive truth. Giving yourself constraints and routines can actually free you. Picture your morning. Instead of asking, do I feel like going to the gym or writing that report? Imagine a system where at 7 a.m., your running shoes are already by the bed, or your computer is on with a blank document. You simply do the next step. Psychologists explain that once a behavior is routine, your brain handles it almost automatically. Neuroscience has discovered a second, action-based learning system in the brain whose job is to turn repeated actions into habits. It's what lets you drive a car or order your usual sandwich without conscious thought. For example, imagine grabbing the same sandwich at lunch every day. On the first visit, you deliberate, but after dozens of visits, you no longer spend time wondering which sandwich to select and instead start picking one you like by default. This isn't magic, but rather dopamine-driven habit formation in action. In effect, your brain develops a default autopilot for the choices you repeat. That means if you channel this process deliberately, you can engineer powerful routines. A famous study found it takes on average about 66 days of consistent practice for a new action to become automatic. Think about that. Roughly 2 months for a tiny behavior to lock in. It varies person to person and by habit, but the takeaway is clear. Consistency compounds. Skipping one day to ruin the progress. Any day you done, to repeat a habit simply slows the compounding. It doesn't break it. We usually underestimate these small steps. For instance, something as modest as reading 10 pages a day may feel inconsequential, but over a year it adds up to dozens of books. The difference wasn't raw inspiration or motivation, but the fact of showing up daily. This frames productivity differently. We often celebrate big wins, but the system approach says, focus less on singular victories, more on the daily script. Consider goal setting versus system design. Mark Manson and others argue that tying your happiness or success to end goals, like be rich or lose weight, can backfire. Instead, making small daily choices, saving or exercising regularly, is a system that reliably delivers results. You may not thrill to the grind every day, but over months or years, the compound effect is undeniable. Systems free us from burnout. Willpower is limited. After all, relying on grit once a month is like pulling an all-nighter every night. Eventually, it burns out. One productivity analyst even notes, waiting for motivation is like waiting for a bus that never arrives on schedule. So what does engineering your system look like in practice? First, take inventory of your daily habits. The flow of your day is already a system, whether organized or chaotic. What time do you eat, sleep, work, play? Notice the cues that trigger your habits: the alarm clock, the commute, the empty fridge. Small inputs in these systems often have outsized effects. For example, keeping a water bottle on your desk is an environmental nudge that reliably makes you drink more water. Setting your phone to grayscale can subtly curb mindless scrolling. These tweaks exploit the brain's tendency to stick with default paths. Systems thinking also teaches us to expect trade-offs and be patient. One of its laws is that the easier route usually leads back in. If we look for shortcuts, we'll likely end up in the same hole. On the flip side, it reminds us that small changes can produce big results, although the biggest leverage points are often the least obvious. This is why relentless micromanagement of every second can feel futile. Sometimes stepping back to see the big picture yields more insight. For instance, rather than forcing yourself to learn for 3 straight hours every day, scheduling 15 minutes of focused study after breakfast might be more sustainable. Over months, those small sessions accumulate into mastery. Relationships work similarly. Human connections aren't chaotic either. They have their own unseen rhythms. Psychologists find that couples who establish little routines tend to feel more stable and connected. As one therapist observes, routines provide grounding, structure, consistency, and stability in relationships. Think about a weekly date night or a nightly check-in call with a friend. These aren't glamorous, but they signal commitment. In fact, scheduling time together creates a deliberate commitment to show up for your loved ones. That consistency builds trust. When life gets unpredictable, that steady ritual becomes an anchor, a reminder that some threads in your system are unbreakable. Of course, there's a balance. Too rigid a routine can become stale, but the antidote to rigidity is adjusting the system, not abandoning it entirely. With this mindset, setbacks feel different. If you slip a day or two, eat junk or skip the gym, the system view says it is not a personal failure, but an opportunity to diagnose. Why did the system falter? Maybe the trigger wasn't strong enough, or the plan was too complex. Adjust and try again. The data backs this resilience. Research on habit formation shows missing an occasional day doesn't derail the process. No one's life runs at 100% efficiency all the time, and the best systems absorb the bumps. As we wind down this journey, let's pull together the threads. Engineering your life doesn't mean rigidly scheduling each minute or treating yourself like a machine. It means recognizing the patterns already in play and steering them with intention. Start simple. Pick one part of your day to improve. Could be morning, evening, work breaks, whatever feels chaotic. Ask, what small, consistent action could tilt this in a better direction? Maybe it's writing a 1-sentence journal each night, or standing up and stretching every hour. Then commit to it for a month. Notice how it feels to no longer make a decision about it. You just do it. The culmination of all these tweaks is not just efficiency, but a sense of calm authorship. When your life has a well-tuned system, you're not a leaf in the wind. You're the gardener who tends the soil, setting the conditions for growth. The tension resolves. By structuring your days, you actually create freedom. You free your mind from endless juggling, preserve energy from decision fatigue, and quietly direct the course of your future. Imagine looking back a year from now. The person you are will largely be a result of the systems you've built today. Maybe it's not headline making, but there's something deeply satisfying about that. You become aware that each choice, each small action, is wiring the person you all become. That's a powerful insight and a call to awareness. So here's your takeaway. Design the gears, don't just chase the sparks. Identify one small habit to weave into your life. Trust the process for the long term, and watch how your life's system begins to hum a bit more harmoniously. After all, as that Asian efficiency post reminds us, once your life system is aligned, gaining control over your goals becomes not a frantic scramble, but a smooth, confident journey. Embrace that shift. Your future self will thank you for the wisdom of engineering today's system.